We seem to always miss this particular aspect of metabolic health. And I think it's because we don't want to. And the reason we don't want to is so much easier to talk only about calories. So let's talk today a little bit about where calories fit in metabolic health. And so we have a nutritionist, Anna, that's going to be coming in and talking to us today. And I'm really excited. I've been looking forward to this. So I'm going to turn this over right here to her so we can learn more about calories or chemistry. Let me flip my screen around here. We get her on right away. Let's get this going.
So I'm Anna Polich. I'm from Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, which many people call the armpit of the world. But I see there's lots of Canadians on here, so that's really exciting to see. So today I just want to talk a little bit about my journey, because I coach people, but I don't just talk the talk. I've walked the walk for many years, and I really resonated with Elisa talking about like learning about something and then diving into the science and just researching it fully because that is really how I got where I was. And so I cracked my own code to reverse my own prediabetes and other health conditions. So here's some pictures of me, and I am a nutritionist, but I also had a degree in human biology, chemical and biosciences technology. I'm a nutritionist, a personal trainer. I was a keto coach, but I just spent the majority of my adult life overweight, and I just couldn't figure it out. And like a lot of my clients, before I lost my weight, I was spending 5 days a week at a high intensity boot camp because that was what we were told would help us to lose weight. And I didn't lose a single pound. And every time they weighed us in on that scale and checked our body fat, and nothing was happening for me. Um, but I was also eating all the time, especially overeating on the weekends, and I was eating the wrong foods. And I have a strong family history of type 2 diabetes. I struggled with autoimmune thyroid disease. So I essentially blamed these health conditions because, I just thought that was how I had to live. And I went on to struggle with infertility. So we tried to get pregnant with our first child. And that's when I ran into the first doctor that actually brought to my attention insulin resistance, which led me on, a real a real journey to essentially research everything about that and why I was struggling with that. And then I just really realized that my body fat was, just a symptom of a deeper rooted problem. So on the left, that was me when I was toggling between essentially dieting and binging. I was good all week. Like, I think most can probably resonate with this. I was good all week. I stuck to my plan, my super calorie restricted plan, my, high intensity interval training. And then the weekend would hit and I would binge, and it caught up with me because I was essentially hammering myself with processed, what I like to call garbage, every weekend. My claim to fame was I could eat two giant bags of, these are Canadian old Dutch potato chips, like two of them. I would have one as a snack and the next one was my dessert. But then Monday would come and my diet would start again. And I would do it all over again. And then, of course, I tried all the diets. So, when I learned about these products, I was a bit skeptical as well because I had tried them all. I tried the Herbal Magic, the LA weight loss, the cabbage soup diet. Someone even told me about a beef jerky and Diet Coke diet. Like, you name it, I tried it, but it was all short term. Um, and I would figure it out eventually. So this was me. I couldn't control myself around food. I used to say, my other claim to fame was like I could eat and eat, and I just didn't have an off switch. So I essentially ran my own N=1 experiment. And this is why a lot of my clients say they trust me because they've heard my journey and I'm not just preaching the textbook info. I've really tried it all. Um, so this was my transformation up to date. I am always going to be on a journey. of just becoming healthy with, like Elisa said, the side effect of fat loss. So I lost over 60 pounds. I've lowered my A1C. I was in the pre-diabetic range. And I've, resolved a lot of my own health issues. So my personal turning point was realizing that weight loss wasn't about eating less and exercising more, despite, all of what my doctor continued to tell me. And I saw how blood sugar swings could drive hunger and fatigue and fat storage. And I learned that, metabolism was hormonal, not mathematical. So that's where the calories versus chemistry comes in. So, essentially, despite your doctor or dietitian telling you to eat less and exercise more, you continue to gain weight because there is more to the story. So, um, I'm going to tell you some of the secrets that your doctor doesn't tell you. So, why most diets fail is because, like I said, we're white knuckling it through the week and we're draining our willpower to stick with this super calorie restricted diet, and we're hungry and we're craving everything we know we shouldn't have. So we quit and we feel guilty and feel stuck and we're frustrated and we get angry at ourselves and we just think we're a failure. But what you need to do is to switch off your hunger and cravings so that you can handle them, right? By eating the right foods. So this is human physiology, right? So if I gave you 7 ounces of steak and a large order of French fries, they have the same amount of calories, but the steak will keep you full for hours on end, especially if you pair it with fiber, which a lot of us know. But the fries will make you hungry within the hour because they were engineered that way. So you keep coming back for more. So essentially what's supposed to happen is when you've had enough, your fullness hormones would typically send that message to your brain that you've had enough and it's time to stop eating. But certain foods actually bypass those fullness hormones, like the giant bags of potato chips that I used to eat, and they trigger your hunger hormones. So they actually have scientists that work in the lab trying to develop these foods. Like, I'm sure you've all seen the commercial with the Lay's. I bet you can't just eat one, right? The scientists work on that so that you crave more of those foods. So even when you've eaten more than enough calories, that's how they're designed. So your doctor's advice to eat in moderation and control portions and restrict calories falls flat because you can't moderate foods that were designed to override fullness hormones and stimulate your hunger hormones. It's just a no-win situation. So what you need to do is to replace the foods that make you hungry with foods that keep you full and satisfied. So you need to take those hunger stimulating foods out and replace them with foods that balance the hunger and fullness hormones. So in essence, a low carb way of eating, high protein, high fiber, low carb will actually lead to less hunger and less glucose spikes and therefore less insulin spikes. So like I said, protein, fiber, healthy fats, and carbs sprinkled in, which leads me to my next slide, because this is one of the things I teach my clients is to eat your food in the right order. The order in which we eat our food matters, right? So the majority of the population is not eating enough fiber, for one. I am the culprit of that. And protein. Everyone is eating lower protein and they rely heavily on packaged and processed foods. So it's really important to lead your meals with fiber and protein. Protein stabilizes glucose, it improves satiety hormones. Fiber slows carbohydrate absorption and it blunts blood sugar spikes. And that just helps reduce your cravings naturally. It helps you stay fuller longer and prevent energy crashes. And I always say have carbs as dessert, right? So many people, I know my mother-in-law, she used to tell me she made cookies but they were sugar-free because she used to take the cookies and roll them in sugar, like for the coating, which, I loved. So she just didn't roll them in the sugar, so they didn't have sugar, but she didn't understand that carbs turn to sugar. So I always say carbs as dessert. If you've eaten your fiber and protein, you can have the carbs at the end of the meal, and that will help blunt the glucose spike. So another thing that I usually challenge people to is to try and eat foods without a label. And if they have a label, so if it's not just meat, veggies, fruit, any of those, if the food has a label, try and eat foods with less than 5 ingredients on the label. And I think this surprises a lot of people when they go to the grocery store and they look at how many ingredients are in the packaged foods that they're eating. So we also want to ignite fat burning mode because your body either runs on carbs or fat. So you have two fuels, you have carbs and fat, but your body only burns one at a time. So if you think of it in a way that you're trying to start a campfire and carbohydrates, which is glucose or carbs that you eat, are like the crumpled newspaper. That's how we used to start fires. We'd throw newspaper in there and it would go up in flames. So that is the carbohydrates. They ignite instantly and they're a quick energy. They give you that quick heat. Your body loves using them because they're easy and they're efficient. And who doesn't like easy and efficient, right? Even our bodies do. But paper burns fast and disappears quickly. So you have to keep throwing in more. And if you add too much paper, it smokes up the room, right? So this is like blood sugar spikes. And then it takes a while for you to come down from that. But because the fire is always busy burning paper, it never gets around to the logs sitting underneath. And the logs are your body fat. So the thing is you feel hungry often, your energy goes up and down because you're burning the paper and then you need to throw more paper in. And those logs take longer to catch, and that's part of it, right? But once they do, they burn slow and steady and for hours. And your body can use your body fat as fuel, right? These logs will produce consistent heat without needing that constant refueling. So essentially, you get stable energy, fewer cravings, longer satiety, and your body finally uses the stored fat. So insulin, so every time you eat, and especially when you eat carbs, but anytime you eat, insulin is released. And insulin is a hormone made by your pancreas that acts like a traffic controller, essentially. So it controls where the nutrients go, especially glucose. So its main job is to move energy from your bloodstream into your cells where it can actually be used or stored. So that is the goal of insulin. Grab the sugar, move it into your cells. It's kind of like the key to the door of your cells, and your cells are like locked houses. So the glucose is essentially standing outside trying to get in, and insulin unlocks the door. But sometimes insulin has to continue to knock on the door because the lock gets stuck and the cells become less responsive to insulin's knocking. So it kind of tunes out that constant noise. So what the pancreas does is it compensates by producing more insulin to keep blood sugar controlled. And this chronic high insulin state pushes the body towards that insulin resistant state. That's where you see the increased hunger, the difficulty losing fat, and then eventually over time, you get the rising blood glucose levels if that cycle isn't interrupted. And that's insulin resistance and how it develops, and it leads to type 2 diabetes. And here in Canada, there are very few physicians that actually test fasting insulin levels. So fasting insulin is different than fasting glucose. People often get them confused, but fasting insulin levels are often high for years before you would see it in your blood glucose levels. But doctors are only catching it once it shows up as a high blood glucose level. So we can catch this years before. So this graph shows what happens to insulin levels with the standard advice of eating, 6 small meals a day. So your fat fertilizing hormone is essentially turned on. So the green is the increased insulin when you're eating, and the blue is the decreased insulin when you're fasting. So essentially, you should always either be feasting or fasting if you want to lose weight. And, you know, because when you eat frequently and you eat a lot of refined carbs, again, you get those insulin spikes, right? So you get the blood sugar, it rises quickly, insulin spikes come to bring it down, blood sugar drops too low, the brain says, eat again, preferably sugar, because I like to burn that really fast. And then the cycle repeats, and then you're in fat storage mode all day long. So great if you're grazing all day, if you're just like having little snacks all day long, you would just have green peaks all day long, and your body can't burn fat if insulin is constantly present. And it's just essentially telling your body to store it. It's fertilizing the fat. So, how you can get around this, as I'm sure you've kind of figured out, is you can play with your eating window, right? So, if you've done intermittent fasting, heard of intermittent fasting. This was my the first thing I tried was shortening my eating window to 8 hours. That's a popular option. What this means is you have all your meals in 8 hours, which leaves you 16 hours to not eat, which the majority of is usually while you're sleeping. And during this time, your insulin levels are low and you are in fat burning mode. So an example is eating only between 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. But at the very least, just stop snacking. Have your 3 meals a day that have lots of fullness stimulating foods in them. So this is more of like a time blocked eating. It's not about starving, it's about giving insulin time to come down. So 3 structured meals is way better than grazing all day because it allows your body to switch from a sugar burner to being a fat burner, and it improves your insulin sensitivity and your energy overall. So we're not talking about restricting foods, but we're rather creating metabolic rest periods, just so your metabolism can have that time to work properly. So, like I say, intermittent fasting is when you are going to have a chance to eat your own belly fat. So we dealt with hunger by reducing carbs, eating foods in the right order, adding fiber, increasing protein. When you're not eating, you're fasting. Like I said, intermittent fasting is a very popular place to start. Best way to lower your insulin levels and then get you into fat burning mode. And then introduce supplements if needed, which are very helpful because they can bridge nutritional gaps. They can optimize a lot of things, mental performance, support recovery. And supplements are metabolic aids that support your healthy lifestyle and your habits. So in combination, and they help you to move closer to that healthy lifestyle. They're helpers, like training wheels, I like to say. Like the fiber supplement, that acts like a speed bump for glucose. It slows digestion. It helps with, a smoother blood sugar response. It helps fullness signals reach the brain sooner, and it makes it easier to avoid snacking or overeating. And then, many people talked about the, metabolic support drink. So the yerba mate, which I absolutely love. I love the flavor of it. I could, drink it in my sleep, but I still have some to finish off for tonight, but that helps. I actually wear a CGM often, so I have tested the products because I am a science nerd. So I wore a CGM, I tested the products. I saw that, it helped my glucose. It helped to reduce any post-meal spikes. My cravings were under control. My appetite, it was weird because, I was on my own journey. I have lost a lot of weight. I'm still on a journey trying to build more muscle, but that level up of appetite control and less cravings was just amazing. And it really, I'm busy. I have 2 kids now. I'm their personal Uber driver, driving them around to all their activities. And a lot of times I am unable to feed myself. They are fed. So I love the yerba mate. I have a water in my car all the time. I have the packets loaded in my center console. I think I saw somebody with their TikTok, they showed their center console full of them. That is me. So, I don't see it as another weight loss product. I see it as, metabolic support. And I really think it's, such a great system to help you rebuild that foundation in the background. And again, it doesn't have the side effects of GLP-1s. I years ago tried a GLP-1 myself. I work in the field of diabetes full time. It just wasn't for me. And I am not against GLP-1s. I think they are another tool that people have, and I coach a lot of people that are on them. But regardless of whatever you take, you do need to change your nutrition and lifestyle in order to create good habits. So the great news is that you can still live your life and reach your health goals. Reaching your health goals doesn't have to feel like a root canal. And I think that's what we were taught in the past. So, as Trent mentioned earlier, this is my version. But you can prevent, or in some cases, reverse chronic disease, like myself. My family history of type 2 diabetes didn't have to dictate my outcomes. And if you take pretty much any chronic modern disease, listed here, PCOS, type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, fatty liver, Alzheimer's, which they call type 3 diabetes, they are all rooted in insulin resistance and insulin levels being too high over time. So if you're living with any of these conditions or you want to reduce your risk of developing these conditions, you'll want to follow some of the phases we just talked about. So my quick start steps that I talked about in summary, eat 2 to 3 meals, stop grazing in between meals, stop snacking, build your meals around protein and fiber first. Leave 4 to 5 hours between meals when possible. Stop eating at 7 p.m. That alone can be a game changer when you really extend that fasting window overnight, and use metabolic supports if needed to smooth the transition. It's not extreme. It's not keto. It's not about perfection. It's just about retraining your metabolism.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Anna. This is
really good stuff. Really good stuff. So I'm going to stop that one and jump back in. So thank y'all so much for being here this morning. I'm going to be doing Coach Ken in the AM here in just a minute. This is a little bit of my continuing education. I hope you learned a lot from being here and being a part of it. If you've got any questions, particularly about those supplements that you talked about, the Feel Great system, that's one of the things that is a game changer for so many people. And I know it's been for us. If you are interested, I'm going to put it up here. This is how to order the Feel Great system. It's right here on my screen. If you'd like to know more about it, there it is. So thank you for being here, and we'll see you back around